Previously on Heated Rivalry.
I'm also hoping to make a video on the stereotypes that Reid maybe unconsciously used in describing Shane in the books, so if you'd like to see that, maybe consider subscribing.
I've seen a lot of pretty deserved, in my opinion, criticism for Shane's portrayal in the books. Criticism that says that he's both written too stereotypically Asian, almost to the point of fetishistic exoticization, but also that he's written like a white person. How is that possible? Those should be two opposing arguments, right? How could both of those things apply to one character? Who's correct? Well, I'm here to argue that both of those criticisms are correct, just in different ways. The first time Shane is properly described to the reader in the books, he is written to have jet black hair and very dark eyes, his skin flawless and tan with a smattering of freckles. The next thing we learn about his appearance is how he is 4 inches shorter than Ilya. Not what his height actually is, but how much shorter he is compared to Ilya. Now, I need to go on a little bit of a tangent about Shane's height and weight. Shane is almost always described as small or short. But in Heated Rivalry, Shane describes himself as 5 feet 10 inches and built of solid muscle. This was set in 2011, where he is 20 years old. Sometime after that, we get a description of his height and weight in comparison to JJ Boiseau. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that back name. I have no clue how to pronounce it. I don't know French. A full 10 inches shorter and 70 pounds less, it says, than JJ, who is 6'7" and over 250 pounds. Now, I don't really know how your American measurements work, but according to the internet, that puts Shane at 5'9" and 180 pounds at 2016, where he is 25 years old. In the long game, he says that he's 5'10" and 200 pounds, but we also get a comment from Ilya being doubtful of this. Unless dude somehow lost an inch at 20 and grew back said inch after the age of 25, I think Ilya's pretty correct in doubting him. Either that or I just don't know how to count an American, or maybe Shane was exaggerating when he says he's a full 10 inches shorter than JJ. Anyway, that tangent wasn't technically necessary. I just took way too much time trying to calculate your American inches, and I refused to take it out of my script. As I said before, in Heated Rivalry, the book that introduces us to Shane and most likely cements what your mental image of him would be, Shane is almost always described as being small. Yes, he's not actually supposed to be short or small. 5'10" is pretty tall. It's only where he is described in comparison to much larger characters like Ilya and JJ that he is called short. But if that comparison is constantly repeated and the only other characters whose height is described are those who are much bigger than him, I don't think it can be blamed on the readers for them thinking he is small, especially when how small he is emphasized multiple times in the text. Ilya looms over him, the contrast between him and JJ being called comical for how big it is, Shane himself constantly calling himself short or small, etc., etc. Obviously, the stereotype that Asians are short or small in stature is extremely common, but Shane is technically not short, he's just shorter. And I'd argue that his height difference with Ilya more lends itself to another stereotype commonly attached to Asians, the feminization and emasculation of Asian men. Shane is described as cute or pretty multiple times in the books, and normally I wouldn't necessarily consider this stereotyping. It's a romance novel, you know? You're gonna call your partner pretty or cute or stunning or gorgeous or whatever. That's fine. It's the way it is written that bothers me. The way Shane's quote-unquote prettiness is juxtaposed against Ilya's manliness. When Shane wears makeup, he's pretty, like a doll, Ilya says, which, if you know anything about Asian history and how Asian women have been stereotyped and fetishized in Hollywood specifically, but also I don't think the rest of the Western countries are necessarily free from those stereotypes, you know why this wording in particular feels so off to me. When Ilya wears makeup, he did not look pretty. No, of course not. He's too manly for that. Shane's hair is another thing I have beef with. Is it necessary to mention that Shane can't grow body hair, or in this case, facial hair and chest hair specifically? They were mentioned a couple of times and again used to juxtapose against the more masculine Ilya. It's a little strange to me and is so reminiscent of the strange fetishization that some people have for Asian women because of our perceived lack of body hair. I want to give Reid a little grace. The way some of this is written, especially when it pertains to the height or the hair stuff, is very much like Shane has insecurities about not looking mature or grown up enough. He mentions looking like a baby and how baby fat still clings to his face. That's something that a person of any race can be insecure about, especially when you're 18 and putting yourself in the very public position of an athlete where a lot of your physical characteristics are going to be put under a microscope. And maybe that was the angle Reid was going for, but her intentions don't really matter when the end result is this list of traits that's very similar to emasculating stereotypes forced upon Asian men. Another aspect of Shane that lends to his emasculation and feminization is his submissiveness. Now, I'm honestly kind of reluctant to speak on this. I'm not a gay Asian man myself. I don't live in the American continent and I don't have first-hand experience on how queer and DS culture work over there. I want to make it clear that I know bottoming and being submissive are not the same thing. I'm not saying Shane is submissive because he's a bottom, it's just kinda how his role falls whenever they're sleeping together. And I also don't want to conflate submissiveness with femininity, and I give Reid that. Shane is in no way portrayed as femme. He's a hockey-obsessed jock who has basically no other hobbies than the one connecting to his main interest. Even stuff like yoga can in some ways be connected to hockey. But I can't separate that historically, submissiveness is a trait associated with femininity, and is unfortunately then dubbed emasculating in nature. I don't want to say that portraying any Asian man in this sort of submissive position is automatically stereotyping them as effeminate, and therefore bad because it's contributing to the feminization of Asian men. But that submissive portrayal, combined with the rest of how he is described, certainly doesn't stop it from giving off that sentiment. Maybe my hang-up has to do with the fact that Shane was written by a white woman. It's not written by a gay Asian man who has had explorations or want to explore the DS community and is trying to portray his lived reality or trying to represent a part of himself or even a part of a community he is in authentically. It was written by a white woman raised in a culture where those stereotypes of Asian men are extremely prevalent and, as far as I can tell, has nobody like a sensitivity reader or a consultant to guide her in writing this portrayal. I'm not saying you can't or shouldn't write about experiences that are not your own, but being aware and doing research on the subject you're writing on, especially if you're not super knowledgeable on the subject, is like writing 101. And I don't think she did that much research on Shane and how him being Asian could impact the story and how people could perceive the portrayal of his character. That's actually how I think the other side of this discussion came about. How people actually read Shane as a white man in the books. I think it's not necessarily because they can't see Shane as an Asian man through his physical description. It's the extremely stark lack of how his race affects his life in any way that makes him read like he's white. Shane is an Asian man dominating in an athletic field that has had minimal representation for people like him for years and a history of discrimination at its back. And yet, how that could have affected his life throughout all the years he's played is not discussed once in the books. There is, as far as I can remember, zero portrayal of how he's had to navigate the league and how the hockey world at large has treated him. If you watch my previous video, this is obviously something I've discussed there as well. The lack of discussion on his race is so obvious, especially when you compare it to the show, which in my opinion is still pretty subtle with how they portray it. Unless you're telling me that the book operates in a Yuri on Ice-like universe where discrimination doesn't exist, it is bizarre that the word Asian is not mentioned once in the entirety of the Heated Rivalry or the long game, and the word Japan or Japanese is only used once to refer to Shane's heritage in the long game and is otherwise used exclusively about Yuna. This confused question asked only in Shane's head is the closest thing we get to his race or heritage being discussed in the two books, and it is never mentioned again. This is how many times Russia is mentioned in those two books. The difference is so stark. And obviously, Shane is Canadian. He's always going to be Canadian first, but he's still supposed to be Asian, still Japanese. That isn't something that in real life anyone can escape from or ignore. The fact that in these books it is mentioned so little is so strange. And that's how I think both the statement that Shane is a pretty stereotypical depiction of an Asian man and that his race is discussed so little he is basically white can be true at the same time. When both these things that would normally be connected are so separate in the narrative, it's obvious that it didn't really matter. I want to be fair. I know I've been comparing the books with the show, and I've said how the show has handled Shane being Asian better than the books. But some of the things I've mentioned about Shane being an Asian stereotype is mentioned in the show. Ilya calls Shane pretty in the show as well. It's mentioned that Shane can't grow playoff beard, and Shane's submissive role in bed is something that transferred over from the books. The show also does add its own things that some people might say is also kind of stereotypy, like Hollander's whole role in the show is basically her being Shane's tiger mom. But I'd still say that the show has handled all of that more gracefully. Maybe it's the lack of detailed descriptions comparing Ilya's manliness compared to Shane's. Maybe it has the benefit of having two actors who are pretty similar in stature, thus removing some of the more obvious feminization from the books. Or maybe it's because the show actually addresses Shane being Asian and how that has affected his life, his career, and his relationship with the people he cares about. I don't want to sit here and shit on Rachel Reid, right? I still really enjoy her books. I don't think everything you read or write has to be a deep exploration of society and culture, and more importantly, I don't think she wrote any of what she wrote maliciously or directly to fetishize Asian men. I just hope that she gets the guidance she needs to become confident enough to write deeper about the characters she creates, even ones that she maybe have less experience writing for. Okay, that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching. This video was way more infuriating than I thought it was gonna be. The writing did not flow in the beginning at all. Then it was Lunar New Year and I caught a cough right before I wanted to start recording. I'm actually not sure what video I should make next. If y'all have any ideas or have anything you'd want me to talk about, drop it in the comments. It doesn't even have to be about Heated Rivalry either, to be honest. I actually need something new to watch. I can't just circle my life around this one show.